Before we can run our web server, we need to install all the modules. All right, we need to install the node modules. So to do that, we've done this once before, but to do that, we go to the terminal menu, we choose new terminal, pops this up here. NPM, again, is the node package manager. It's the tool we invoke to do things like install modules. So if we just type npm install, it's going to look through that package file, and it's going to add everything in that package file. So again, our package file, which is provided for us in this case, it has information about our application. Note that it has a property here called main, which is set to server.js. This is so when we run our node app, it knows which JavaScript file to execute. We have some other script stuff here, some other keywords and things. We have dependencies that we only use when developing, like our linter. And then we have dependencies which we use when actually for our web server. We used .env in the past. So that's similar. All of these are new ones that we're going to explore over the next few days. So, all right, so we've installed all of our modules. Now I want to show you how we run everything. So if you click over here in your VS Code toolbar on Run and Debug, and you click on the arrow, you can see that there are a couple different examples here. There's a node server, a node client, and debugging example.js. We're going to focus on node server and node client first. If we look at this, when I open up the launch.json, we've seen this before when we were debugging JavaScript code as well, but now you can see I've got some extra configurations here for node server and for node client. And for node server, I'm using the node package manager to actually run the node app. And there's some advantages of that, which we'll see in a moment. And so it basically runs npm and start, which is one of those scripts in our package file. Here is the node client one. We actually specify that it's of type Chrome. So this will launch our Chrome browser. And we'll be able to debug the client side code from within VS Code, which is like super cool. Okay. So we've got some neat connections here. So let's actually try this out. Make sure node server is selected here, and then press the play button to start debugging. And you'll notice if we look at debug console, you can see where it said nodemon server.js, debugger attached. It's printing out some version stuff. Starting node server.js, debugger attached server started on HTTP localhost 8080. That's the message we put in our code at the end here. Okay, so this is a good sign. Our server is up and running. To now actually connect to things, we click on the arrow and we go to node client and we hit the start debugging button for the node client. And it opens up Chrome and it automatically goes to localhost 8080 for us, super convenient. And it prints hello world. Okay, so our web server is running, our client connected to it, it responded with hello world, it's displayed in Chrome. We've just written like our first web application. Yay. Some other cool features. You'll note here that in the debug console, there's now a pop-up here where it says node server. I can switch over to node client and I can see anything that's output here. There's nothing yet, right? Our client isn't, we don't really have any client code, but this is where client code would appear. You'll also notice that here's our debugging toolbar that we know and love from VS Code, but there's a pop-up menu here because we have different set of controls for the server versus the client. So make sure like you're debugging the right application at the right time, because really now we have two things running. We have client code running. Well, we don't yet, but we will. And we have server code running. And we have both of those together. So that's something that's a little bit different. Um, Let me show you a little bit more with all this setup before we move on. We could, I'm going to set a breakpoint right here on line 24. And I do that again by clicking to the left of the line number, and we get a little red dot here. Now, if I go to the client and I refresh this page, I've hit this breakpoint because I've requested the root page of my web server. So now I'm sitting here and I can see all my local variables, including like the rec object. So here's all the properties of the rec object. There's so many of them, that of which we'll use very few. But we can see like, hey, we got a get method here. That's cool. Here's the path, which we're also going to print out. We can see all of that type of stuff. So we can explore the entire rec object here as well, which is neat. I can step over this line of code and you can see that we've logged path again. That's why there's a 2 here. We've logged this twice. And then we're about to do the hello world. So I'm just going to hit continue. And this keeps running. The other really cool feature about how this is set up in VS Code and by using NodeMon is we can make changes to our web app. So instead of hello world, let's say we want to say good morning instead. When I save this file, you'll notice that NodeMon says, hey, I detected that you just changed your web application. I am automatically restarting due to those changes. And it restarted the server without me having to do that through my debugging toolbar here. So I'm going to turn off this breakpoint. I'm going to go back to Chrome. I'm going to refresh this page. And now it says good morning. Okay. This saves us a ton of time because like NodeMon just restarts stuff for us and we don't need to be like stopping and starting things. Yeah. So if you don't stop it, if you don't stop your server, it's still there running. And therefore, we can't start a second server because there's already a server listening to that port. And so to make sure your server stopped, the best way to do that is to use your debugging toolbar up here. And when the server is selected, pressing the red stop button, that stops the server and the client. You can also look, that's probably the best way. Sometimes that's still not sufficient. Basically, we only need to start our server once because NodeMon will reload it automatically. But let's say we get into a case where we still can't start our servers. You can always just quit VS Code and it will like kill all the things. Sometimes on Windows, that's still not quite enough. And you have to bring up Task Manager and look for the node processes in Task Manager and click on them and kill each of them. But you shouldn't have to do that if you only start the server once. So, but always, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because that can be tricky. Always look down here in the debug console and make sure like your server actually started and you don't get that port error. Otherwise, you're going to be running old code, not the new code you think, and be confused why stuff isn't working. So, let me look at that in 1 second here. Let me stop this.